Hello everyone, it's Alejandro with another update video. A lot of y'all been telling me that you like these, and I'm happy about that because I've been trying to keep y'all cued into what's going on, and I want to thank y'all for the continued support. And I think some of y'all know where this is going because I've been sort of soft releasing to some people who are connected to it. But yeah, I am officially a software engineer for Nice Healthcare. I am ecstatic. It's absolutely amazing to be able to go and work for them as an engineer. I'd been really like excited for that position for a bit. So when I finally got the offer, I was like, oh, thank goodness. I wanted to speak to several things. Is the journey leading up to it, because I know a lot of people probably seeing this and saying like, well, that's a quick progression. A year ago, you're coming into code, and now you're being hired on as a software engineer for one of the companies, and I think some people are wondering, like, are you a bag of successes? You go into these different crafts, and then a couple months later, we start hearing of all the mountains you climbed. But I think that this will be a great video to really expound upon what it took leading up to this, what it took to finally embark on this new part of my journey. I think in the process of talking about these successes, in the process of talking about what I've been able to achieve, what gets lost sometimes is the failures. People get frustrated, say, how did you just levitate to that position? And that's why I really want to take this and the rest of this video to really talk about that in depth and get in the nitty gritty. Not skirt around some of the times that I've fallen right on my face, but really talk about them. Talk about the bruises and scratches coming up to this position. And so if y'all want to stick around, I encourage you to. But yeah, so strap in. Alright, so I transitioned downstairs mainly to get away from the endless din of the vacuum. I figured I'd catch anybody up to speed, just in case, some are unfamiliar with my background. So we'll just start there, and then we'll transition into like we talked about, that nitty gritty. But yeah, so I went to UCR, graduated 3 years. I'm a Bachelor of Arts in English. I used what would have been my fourth year to come back and delve deeper into rap, poetry, and music. That's when I started posting on the music platforms that you may know me from, like Apple Music and Spotify. The pandemic was also going around that time, right? So I said, I'm gonna move back home. I help out my family with my sister, who was transitioning to the online school environment. Many schools in the country and like the world we're transitioning toward. So so after a few months, I was like, okay, I wanted to, decided to work on the suicide crisis helpline. Figured if one of my crafts truly was psychology, like I said, that I should put my money where my mouth was and go engage with it, right? So that's when I started working there. And as time progressed, I was like, there's something more out there, something to complete the mosaic of my craft, something that I should be doing. And that's when I rediscovered my interest in code. I'd been exposed in high school on the hardware side with Arduino bots and robotics class, and on the software side with some JavaScript I was learning alone. But overall, when I started around New Year's 2021, I was almost completely green. It was all extremely new. After a few months of going the autodidactic route, learning by myself on the mobile, on a mobile app called Mimo, it was clear to me, I was in love with code. And the next viable step that I saw would be to find a community to program with, and that's when I started looking at boot camps. I found App Academy and saw, the acceptance rate was 4 or 5%. And I was like, 5%, okay. I don't know if I'm going to get in, but I figured that the only true failure is inaction. You'll hear me say that, but there's plenty of times in my life where, the odds were stacked against me, but the very act of trying meant a lot more than whether or not I fell on my face anyway. So it actually sort of reminded me of when I applied for a placement test for German at UCR, because I had started off for a couple of years just teaching myself, reading from books, going on Duolingo, and just different sources and such, trying to talk to any foreign exchange students that came in that spoke German. When I got placed into the level right below native speakers at UCR, I was not expecting that. I was expecting to be placed in the beginner class. I remember asking the proctors, I said, it's when is the default screen gonna be over so I can see my score and such, because it sort of caught me in a weird situation, because I'd been so prepared to just start from the bottom and have to scratch my way to the top. But at the end of the day, I try to take that same mentality from situations like that to App Academy. I said, hey, the worst thing that happens is I end up exactly where I am, and the best thing that happens is I achieve what I want. So that's what I did, and I did some preparation with 12-minute prep, 12-min prep. I had to go through several rounds, and at the end I got in. I was like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. It was great, but it did mean that time management was something I had to really get down to an exact science for myself, because at one point my days looked like waking up, feeding my younger sister in the morning, getting her prep for school, coding a couple hours at App Academy until we hit the lunch break. At the lunch break, I'm feeding my sister lunch. I'm going and writing music in the lunch break so that I can make my monthly release. I'm coding some more. My mother comes home. I trade off my sister to her. We transition. I eat a quick supper. I code a little more to prepare for the tomorrow, and then before finally transitioning back into the suicide and crisis helpline for the night. Sometimes that meant the days went on like 15, 17 hours, but in like many ways, it's fair to say that those months chiseled me into who I am right now in several respects. But one could also see it as revealing who I always was. And I think that that's what I like to tell people. I think the beautiful things about these kind of experiences is that they seem to make you who you are, but also remind you of who you always were. And I think, because like, for instance, I'd held patience, dedication, fortitude, these words to be really important traits, right? But it was when I put those to the test, when I was in the trenches there during my year of training, that I tasted their true flavor. I mean, we've talked about the dedication, fortitude, right, with hours and all that stuff. But like, as for the empathy and forbearance part, I'd always felt parents should be very patient with their kids, that teachers should have that level of forbearance for their pupils. But when I was in that position, it was something that I had to hone like anything else, because helping my little sister with her classwork and her homework, going to the basics, I had to constantly remind myself she's in the same position as I am in this new craft. And when I'm pair programming with others, that communication and being patient with people from different backgrounds and with different levels of expertise, putting pride aside, putting a lot of those things aside, things that alloy the experience. I had to hone, and of course, with the suicide and crisis helpline, getting different clients calling, that of course many would see as like the ultimate exercise of that empathy, of that communication. But it was really a culmination of all that really was able to, like I said, hone me into who I am, but also reveal traits that were always present. So what emerged from that is the fact that I didn't capitulate when faced with all of the stuff aforementioned, or forsake any of my crafts when the going got rough. That's why I'm able to sort of carry that sense of confidence and fearlessness that I'll take with me the rest of my life. It's like, you've seen what you can do. Sort of like in the same way that running showed me the limits to which I could push my body, the limits to which running in this desert, 115, 114, what you can take. And I feel like this past year and some change, and really everything, honestly, to be honest, like leading up to this point, but especially this past year and a half, has done to me mentally. It's been that proverbial run, but for my mind. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. All right, let's talk about failure. I know a lot of people have sort of a negative perception of the word. I want to challenge that, the deterministic screen to which that's perceived. I feel that really at the end of the day, you can sort of see failures as bullets to be discussed in your future documentary. Ooh, it's a bar. I'll have to write that down. Point is, so let's just jump right into it. High school. Took a lot of AP classes, filled my whole schedule with them, barely scraped my way through them. Complete. When we talk about work-life balance, we talk about between that and sports, I was drowning in work and the activities, and some of the grades reflected that. Work-life balance, complete another disarray. Self-published a book, largely a flop, like a dozen sales. My relationship, some of the teachers, professional at best, felt it was sort of a contentious atmosphere a lot of the time. I had bad asthma too. And I was on the track and cross country team. So I remember going to the heart doctor, and he says, you should consider taking up golf. And of course, with the asthma combined, a lot of days either collapsing in the field, tasting copper in my mouth all the time. On another note, I just remember writing in my journal, like I would just take it out in class, write in my journal, some poetry, short stories, anything to escape like the utter vapidity of everything. Like I just really felt like I wasn't interested in a lot of things, that I was pushing for the sake of pushing. Between the heart problems, the asthma, the knee problems when I was running, made for an interesting time indeed, combined with all the other stuff aforementioned. But what did we glean from it? What did I learn from those experiences or harvest from that I could apply later, or that helped me grow? Let's go one by one. As for the relationship part with the different individuals, although a lot of the relationships were very contentious. It felt like it wasn't really as much of a collaborative atmosphere a lot of the time. there was a lot of really cool people there, faculty and students alike. That, I mean, some that I still talk to this day, and others casually still converse with. Point is, interpersonally, it wasn't a complete loss. And even from some of those more rough interpersonal interactions, there's something to be gleaned from them as well. Stress management, my ability to converse, to bridge gaps, all dramatically affected. So that's great. As for how I got to the next round, how I got to college at all, the GPA was still salvageable. I mean, a lot of the classes were weighted in favor of the higher placement classes, so that helped smooth over some of the real big, the rough parts of the transcript. And although I was exhausted coming out of high school, just completely, probably could have done with a gap year, I scrounged up a cover letter and got picked up by UCR. So I was able to get to that next part of the journey. As for the book, yes, it didn't really garner much in the way of funds, but the process led me to reaching out to a writing collective, which led me to getting invited on a retreat to the East Coast, where I met Colleen Johnson's daughter, Abigail McGrath, who I'm still in contact with to this day. And that's where I started polishing my poetry. Out there in the Catskills, out there in Martha's Vineyard. And that's what led me to the rap poetry I have today. It's a clear line between that and now. Also improved my time management significantly. Not the mindset that addressed the unhealthy work-life balance. That took a couple more years to address. But my ability to manage events effectively, that was improved. As for running, I ended up training every day. Went to physical therapy for my knees. Tried to get my asthma in line. At the very end, I ended up getting allergy shots for the allergy, because it was allergy-induced asthma. Strengthened my heart until there was really no sign of any issues. And ended up becoming the team captain for track and cross country, and bringing down my mile time to 4 minutes 37 seconds. So it acted like a symbol for what was to come, the struggles to come, but also the means by which I would be able to transcend that future struggle. So I think it was a great experience. I often think back to those days, both in running and all the other stuff I just mentioned, and I pulled from that. For all the struggles that came. Yeah. So I guess we'll go on to college now. All right, I speak as the sun's last dying rays fall. Let's get into college. I carried a lot of that blind pursuit mindset from high school. Instead of taking a moment to introspect and see what I really wanted, I instead chose to pull 21 unit quarters, do pre-med simultaneously with English, and a little bit of that is natural because I didn't quite know what I was seeking, and school is a place for such exploration. But there was a lot of my educational endeavor that transcended mere experimentation. I was pushing because that's what I knew to do, and that's what I had done. I took that mentality into a lot of places in my life, but I mean, that's a topic for another discussion. The point is it led to a similar result as high school educationally, where a lot of my good performance offset some of my more rough performance, and I was able to salvage things, but I still was barely pulling myself through the classes, much like what happened before. The work-life balance was, in many regards, it had even worsened, because now I had the freedom to pull these all-nighters. Nobody was going to come in and check on me and say, it's time to go to bed. It was me against the classes, and I think that resulted in a lot of these concepts coming to a head and needing to be addressed. So there was a big shift in my mentality one summer taking physics. There's one gentleman who was contemplating some things about his futures in class, and we were talking. I gave him this big speech about how he should pursue that which he yearns for, and even if it requires an unorthodox path, and to not let Tellurian external influences affect him. And it was so convincing. I ended up convincing myself. I was like, "What am I doing? Am I letting stuff seep in?" It was then I made a promise to myself. I promised myself I wouldn't let pride, prestige, status, any of those more base things to adulterate my vision. To be fair, I was never married to those concepts, but I remember how much they could pull even the unwilling participant to at least unconsciously acquiesce. In high school, it was, well, what classes you taking? CP, HP, AP? Which is it? In college, in university, it was, well, what college do you belong to? UCHAS, Humanities, or your Sciences, CNAS? Oh, Borns. Later on, and it goes to show how this mentality, this phantom of prestige and this totem pole of life can follow you and can constantly be trying to speak in your ear. And then later on, it was like, are you applying to all the FANG companies? Are you making sure you're doing that? Salary's great, and this and there, set you up on a great path. These external things, I mean, it's rooted a lot of the time at a good place. Sometimes you hear from your parents, sometimes you'll hear from other classmates. They're trying to say, like, you want to put you on the right path, set you up in the best place in a pecuniary way, right? But at the end of the day, with the right amount of passion, with the right amount of effort, I mean, you can find that in even unorthodox places. You don't need to walk that path that everybody else walked to find happiness or even to be economically secure. That's why I promised myself that I wouldn't be falling into any of those pitfalls. Instead, I would be pushing for the craft that I wanted. And a lot of that, that's the benefit afforded to having done that. A lot of this is in hindsight. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to pursue then. And I'm still glad that I majored in English, because, I mean, that's something that will follow me the rest of my life, and the experiences I had, and the kids' interaction in neurodevelopment lab, and going to Korea to teach. I mean, these are invaluable experiences and things that I don't regret at all. They added to my existence. But in the course of doing that, there was a lot of stuff that I was doing on the sides that I think I knew at the time just really wasn't the best for me. But I don't know whether it was some of the different whispers in the ear, whether they come from inside or outside, that sort of push you on this path to say, well, I can do it. I will do it. Well, why? Because you feel that this would be the best for the path, that this grind is for the purpose of putting you in a position that maybe later you will want. I mean, look, we're not making the argument here that every bit of the journey has to be all hunky-dory. I mean, as I've explained with App Academy, it was a grind, right? But the argument being made here is that, is this a grind in the direction that you could ever see yourself going? What is the purpose? Introspect and see that. And that's what I had to do. I had to do a lot of soul searching. And that's when I decided to say, okay, well, I'm going to try to see, what clinical psychology has to offer, see if I can salvage my degree to go toward there. The pandemic hit, ended up going home. I could only apply to one program because it was remote, and I knew that would blend well with the family. Got rejected. And so I was really at an odd position, right? Starting off the pandemic, some of the places that I was supposed to teach across the country, I mean, it was completely shut down because New York shut down. A lot of places shut down. Someone would consider that an impasse. Where is the next viable step in your path? I thought to myself, okay, we're going to use this year to really build from scratch, build the things you love. Pursue the music, pursue the poetry, discovered code, and things started taking off. So saying this out loud, I realize it sounds like one big descent, probably to a lot of individuals, but I promise you, it was tempered by a lot of awesome experiences along the way, and what I would call wins. Being able to teach abroad, be able to engage in discourse with people all over the country. I learned so much and experienced so many excellent things along the way that I don't want to make this seem like it was one big struggle bus with not an ounce of respite. It was a harrowing but beautiful experience coming up to this point. But let's talk about what happened after college and my time at App Academy. We're sort of nearing the end of this section about failures. So let's talk about App Academy. App Academy, beautiful institution, wonderful, magnificent. The entire structure of the program is centered around you actually learning the material and being able to apply it afterward. It's like what they do there, or the concepts of trying to get you to learn the material and be able to apply it after, is something you would have in any institution, right? You would think that that's just a standard, but I think we can all agree that that's just not really the case. I'm not trying to bash any other places, but the structure they got going on there it's magnificent. So let's talk about one facet of it. The deferral system. It's a brutal one, but it does make you reevaluate things. It's not shamed. It's almost like a badge of honor, but also something to learn from and to use to push forward. Not something to dwell within. The way it works is you miss a point on the test, you're below the threshold, you get sent back 4 weeks. Everybody you met, everybody you know, that whole cohort that you got connected with, you are leaving and going back to the previous cohort. And what that forces you to do is learn the material both in the cohort that you are in, which is the material that was 4 weeks before, and it forces you to prepare for, the place that you deferred. So at App Academy, let's see, week 2 I deferred. And So I went to an entirely new cohort of people. It was right at the beginning too, so I was really learning. I was like, goodness, this is the beginning of the program, and this is occurring. There's a little bit of uneasiness that occurs there, but I kept my head up. I tried the best. I was about keen into objects. I said, I'm going to learn this with every bit of my existence. And so I went back. I used every bit, every single day. I was studying over where I had messed up and going again, running over it again and again and again. And I ended up meeting some really cool people that I'm still talking about programming with to this day. And what I ended up doing there is really had to reformat. It felt like an update for my brain. You know, I'd carried a lot of ineffective techniques that were ineffective in this kind of environment from previous, schooling brackets, whether it was high school or college. And there I was regimented, and I went in with the right spirit, but there were things that just were ineffectual in this kind of environment that I had to revamp or just completely reevaluate my use of. After my last deferral, went on like a 5 or 6 week perfect exam streak, something like that. It was something wild. And then I ran into the object relational mapping with the ORM sequelize, and got a migration error middle of the test. Ran out of time. There was not a soul to help me, and I got sent back 4 weeks. Ended up doing HTTP requests again, but I ended up getting that really polished, which was nice. It was unrelated to what I was doing at that point, but it actually had long-term benefits as a programmer and throughout the rest of that course. But by the time I came back to that, to sequelize, I could seed, unseed, migrate, unmigrate with my eyes closed. So I learned a lot about that. And that's actually where I started writing huge error reports too, and detailing all the errors I encountered, whatever new project I came into, which actually is one of the things a lot of people know me for. I think a lot of people know like some of my huge error report that I have on Creepy Crawler. I started taking real pride in it and then I started realizing it starts really making you peek at the fabric of just reality itself and seeing like, well, it's really in those bugs that we learn the code. It's in those bugs that we learn the extent to which we can push a program, but also the extent to which we can push the language itself. It's just a lot of crazy philosophical topics. But let's talk about the next deferral. And the final deferral was my very last project, the capstone. I built the browser out for the engine. The engine wasn't built yet. I'd gotten all the MVPs out, and I presented in the class. Went seamlessly. Everybody's doing, they like it. But for one reason or another, they wanted me to expand upon it. I had hit the MVPs. I think one person said that they may have reached a bug or something, but it was seamless in like when I was presenting it. But I could see that it was still early. It was in its proto form, and I tried to take it in stride. So I said, okay. They sent me back, and what a beautiful outcome, because I ended up building Creepy Crawler into what it is today. 9 distributed spiders crawling the web. The amount that I have learned building that project up, and the time that that additional time I got when I deferred to be able to just purely polish that project, I can honestly say I gleaned a tremendous amount from taking that time. I really improved my crawling skills, my web crawling skills. I mean, it didn't have a crawler at that point. It wasn't even in there. I hadn't crawled in Python, and I finally crawled in Python. I brought in Scrapey. I hooked it up with Flask through the asynchronous request library called Crochet, and it was such a profound moment for me. To see my back end fielding requests from my front end sending it out. And saying like, okay, I can type something in and it will be interpreted, searched, and will turn up a response from the web. It was beautiful, and so that I was very thankful for that. Of course, at the time it's rough to digest anything, but I tried to always take these things in stride to see where I could go from it. But so yeah. And that was all the deferrals anymore. They would have kicked my butt out. But so yeah, from there I hit the job search, and the rest is history. I suppose if there's anything you glean from this, it's that the road doesn't need to be smooth for it to be right. In fact, the road to your dreams, the road to your goals, almost certainly will be bumpy. I mean, this wagon hit every single pothole on the way over there. But at the end of the day, I feel fulfilled. I feel happy, complete. Feel that I'm doing what I was meant to do. And I'm just one story. I know individuals who went through this program with children. Well, I mean, I had my little sister, but I know individuals who had young babies that all different stories of all different types. People who left their jobs to didn't have any other fallback. People really sacrificed and put it all on the line to be in this program, and we're able to bring that project to fruition. When I look into their faces and I look into them and I hear their stories, it brings me happiness and it puts a smile on my face, because it makes me realize that there's something that transcends skill. There's something that transcends pecuniary interest. There's something that transcends it all, and that's the human will. And if you have that, and you have that dream, and there's something that you truly feel that you were meant to go achieve, or to at least try, then do it. Let this be your sign. So yeah, that's all I have for y'all today. If you got this far, type fertig in the comments, fertig, in Finnish and German, or terminé, whatever language floats your boat. But yeah,